See. So I would love to hear a little bit about where you've come from and how you grew up, and
Okay.
it's very open-ended, whatever you think is
I'm good at
important to important to mention, understanding that the purpose of the Voices of Baltimore project is to talk about the voices of those who came up in a Jim Crow South, and what it took to overcome those obstacles, and where you think we are today. Like, what do we still need to continue to work on
Okay.
today?
Well, I was born in Thomasville, Alabama. That was the home of my mother and my grandmother. My mother and father married in a place called Piper, Alabama. But when I was on the way, she went home to have me. So I was born in Thomasville. And in 3 months, my father encouraged my grandmother to stop working in the boarding house for whites and come and live with us and take care of me. So she became my nanny and she lived 14 years with us, rearing me. My daddy was principal of a school in Bibb County, Alabama. Very racist. And his school stopped at the 10th grade. It was a coal mining community, a rural coal mining community. It wasn't urban. They had one store and one post office. But the people made money living and working in the coal mine. The house I grew up in was furnished by the company. And the man who owned it was president of the Birmingham Trust National Bank, Mr. Walter Henley. And we lived there until I left and went to high school, because when my father's school stopped at the 10th grade, that's where all blacks were to have had enough education. And Daddy sent me to Alabama A&M to finish. I finished high school at Alabama A&M in Huntsville, Alabama. And from there, I wanted to go to Auburn. My father never told me I couldn't go to Auburn because I was a little black girl. He said, "Oh no, you want to go to Tuskegee, Booker T. Washington School, because it's much better." And I had no choice. I went where they sent me, to Tuskegee, and I have a degree in hospital dietetics, because that was supposed to be pre-med for me. Daddy said you get all the sciences you need, and you can go from there. But in my junior year at Tuskegee, my daddy had a heart attack. And I knew my mother, who was earning $60 a month teaching school, could not afford to send me to medical school. So I accepted the degree, went on to Boston and did my internship, and took a job in Huntsville, in Louisville, Kentucky, at Red Cross Hospital, where I worked for 1 year. While I was at Louisville, I became engaged to Dr Emery, whom I dated in college. And we married in December of 1947. I finished college in May of 47. I did my internship at Beth Israel Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts. Came back to Louisville, where I was chief dietitian. In a rural area, even though Kentucky had some industrial work, people didn't understand health care. And we had to go to surgery with whomever was going to have a diet-related surgery. A man had an abdominal surgery one day, and the next day the doctor told him, "Oh, well, we're going to let you eat." I gave him his meal of liquids, and he was very rude to me. Cursed me for everything that he could think of. So the night I called my dad and said, I don't think I can stay here. So he said, I told you, I think all black girls should teach. Come home. So I finished my year at Louisville. At the time, I was married, pregnant, went home, had my baby, and Daddy sent me to Alabama State to get the education I needed to match the science that I had in my college work. And I became a chemistry physics teacher. The next year, I was employed at Bibb County Training School in Alabama. That's 40 miles south of Birmingham. And I worked there for 3 years. They also, when my husband finished Tuskegee, he was employed there. But he did not want his children reared in the rural area. He came from New Orleans, and he felt we should be in an urban area. So we moved to New Orleans and lived there for 7 years. Built a home, and I was employed at one of the high schools in New Orleans, L.B. Landry High School, and I taught physics and chemistry there for 3 years. Learning about a program at Morgan State, it was a summer program for black teachers to improve their background in science and technology. I came up, mother had 5 sisters here, so I knew I would be welcomed. So I came, and in the chemistry class, the head of the department, Dr. Spalding, said, I could do redox equations better than anyone, and there were only 3 blacks in my class. The others were white, at Morgan. He said, why don't you teach here? I said, well, they won't hire me. The next day, he took my transcript down to the Department of Education. They sent for me. I went down for an interview, and they hired me on the spot. And that's how I got to Baltimore.
Wow.
1960.
My goodness. What do you think was the hardest part of that whole journey? What was the most difficult challenge for you in all of that?
My challenge was relocating with 3 children. And I had a husband. But I was sure he could get employment here. Though he was working in New Orleans at Kaiser, he came up. I called him and told him they offered me a job. He said, don't sign any papers till I get there and see what it says. And when he came, he went with me to personnel, and they found out he had a degree in industrial arts. Baltimore had a positive teachers in industrial arts, so they hired him on the spot. Mm-hmm. So we made the decision to leave New Orleans in the midst of all of that racism, where Leander Perez said that there would be no miscegenation of the races, and the children would stay at home, but we would have to go to work.